this is a simple to-do app where we use FastAPI for our backend and Nuxt for our front end. So Nuxt is a view framework that can be used to build full stack applications. So in the simple projects, you can get to see your to-dos, you can add a to-do, you can edit, and also you can delete a to-do. Now in this project, we're also going to be making use of MySQL and Postgres. So we're going to be showing how to connect and use MySQL for your backend project and how to connect and use Postgres for your backend project. So let's quickly get an overview and test this out, then we dive in. Now right here, you can click on add to do, and I can just say, so let me say visit admin, and like that, and that's been added. You can edit it by just say, let me say done and mark as completed, and that's been edited, and you can delete it as well, and that's been deleted, and you can delete everything, and they've been deleted. So this is what we're going to be doing, and let's dive right quickly into it. Following this simple step out right here, I'm going to share this document so you can get to follow them to make things very easy. Also, the code for this project will be shared when it is completed at our end. So the first we have to do is to be sure that we have terminal installed. I'm going to open my git bash or command prompt or terminal. I'm just going to do Python 3 space double dash version like that. If you have Python installed, it's going to display. If you do not have, you can just search for Python download, and it's going to take you to a page where you can download the latest version for your operating system. So that's the first thing we have to do. The next thing is to check if you have UV installed. So UV is more like pip, which is a package, Python package manager. It helps you to package your application, to build, to manage, and do other things. Just like you have npm in JavaScript. So you also have UV or pip. So pip is something we've been using over the years, and UV it's a more recent and more better package manager. So UV it's what I basically use for all my Python projects. I've migrated my old project from pip to UV, so it's very easy, it's very self-managed, and it's a better version of pip. So if for you to be sure if you have it already, just come to your terminal. You can search for UV space double dash version, and if you see something like this, that means you have it. If you don't see anything like this, that means you don't have it. The next thing is for us to go and download it. So again, this has already will be shared also, so you can click on that, and this is the UV installation, or you can go to your Google and search for UV installation or something like that, and again just take it to this. So if you go to the documentation, you can select your operating system, copy this, paste it on your git bash or your terminal or your command prompt, and it's going to install for you. You can use this other installer like PyP, like Homebrew, some other stuff like that. So that's it. After you've installed it, check the version again, and then let's move on. So the next we have to do is to initialize our project using the UV. Now we have UV installed. We have then move on to initialize our project. Again, I'm just going to be making use of my terminal. I'm going to seed into a folder where I want my projects to be in. I'm just going to create a directory right here. Let me just call it to do something like to do, seed into the directory, and let me run the command uv init, then your project name. That's going to be uv init. Then I'm just going to call this to do backend. This is the backend part, which is, yeah, just enter, and project has been initialized. If I do ls, you can see this is the to do backend right here. Now we're going to head on to open this project in our code editor. So for this, I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. It's a popular code editor. So I'm going to open it up right here. If you don't have Visual Studio Code, you should download it by searching for Visual Studio Code and click on this, and you're going to get it downloaded right away. So I already have it. I'm going to open it up right here. Click on Open Folder, or try to look for where the project is on your system. Mine was on Tools right here, and that was called To Do's, and that was To Do Backend. So open that project. And if I open the project, I can see this how it is. When you initialize your project, you're going to have this stuff right here. You're going to have your Python version. You're going to have your main.py, which you can run. You're going to have your project, pyproject.toml. This is more like gives an information on your project and also help to house your dependencies right here. Then more like a README stuff right here where you can write some stuff to give more information about your project. So that's it right here, and it's also going to create a Git for us, and you can see the Git ignore right here, and you can track this by using Git, defaultly created. So what we have to do next is to install our dependencies. So again, we have the command right here. We want to have our FastAPI. Again, this is a FastAPI project, and we need to install our FastAPI, which is going to be used as our backend framework. We install our FastAPI using this command. We install the Unicorn server. The Unicorn server is an environment that where FastAPI can run on top, and other dependencies can house or run on top. So it's just like a server that helps to run our Python project. We'll be using ORM, SQL Alchemy. ORM means Object Relational Mapper. It basically helps us to, write SQL script by using our Python code. So by writing a function or a class, it's going to convert that to SQL and helps to connect to your database and do other stuff. So basically helps us, instead of us writing our database query ourselves, by writing Python code, it helps to manage our DB. So that's what ORM is, and the most popular one and the commonly used for larger scale project is SQL Alchemy. Then we will be, as we rightly said, we'll be using Postgres as our DB and also MySQL. So for Postgres users, you'll be adding this dependency, while for MySQL user, you'll be adding this dependency. So I'm just going to be showing how to connect both to our database. I'll be using both. Then we'll be using Alembic for our database migration. We'll be using pedantic setting to load our ENV variables into our project. Then we'll be using Greenlet for asynchronous DB query and all of that. So for us to have this dependency, you can either add them one after the other, or you can use this general command right here to install everything. So I'm just going to copy this command right here, and I'm going to come to my project, open my terminal like this, and make sure I'm in the root of where I have my project right here, pyproject.something. I'm just going to do the UV add, and you can see right here it auto created a .venv for me, and my dependencies were added right there, and those were in our .venv. So that's the power of UV. If we're using pip, he will not do that for us. So we have to manually create our environment and then start, doing stuff. But by using UV, which is an improved version of a Python code management, it helps you to auto manage your application within an environment. Now we can see this dependency have been added. For me to be sure, I'm going to go to my Py project like that. This file right here, you can see in the dependency part, these are the dependencies that were added for me. So we're going to proceed with the lecture. Let's proceed to, first of all, have a Python extension which is going to help our IDE to recognize and properly format and write a Python code. So in your IDE right here at the left, you're going to see this kind of stuff right here, which is called extensions. Click on that, and you can see some extensions that are already there for me. That's for my IDE. Then moving down, you can see some extensions that have been recommended and stuff like that. So what you just have to do is to come to the search right here and search for Python like that. It's going to search the marketplace and pull up some extensions with the name Python. I'm just going to wait for this to do, yeah, stuff like that. So you can see there are some different Python extension right here. So the ones that you should be interested in is this Python right here, the Python from Microsoft. So click on install and install it. Then you also have the Pylance, which is Pylance again from Microsoft. This helps to auto detect Python code and also help for auto importation. If you want to import code from one package to another, this is very helpful and can help you do that. So make sure you add this to your installation. Then lastly, have the black formatter right here. This helps us to auto add indentation to our Python by when we do Shift Command F, help us to format our Python code. So that's basically what this does. Help you format your Python code. This other one is the main one, help recognize that your code is Python, and the Pylance help for auto importation. So make sure you have those ones. You can move forward by having your Python debugger if you want that, or environment, some other stuff like that. You can add them for that. Okay. Also, some students also like to ask which theme I'm using. So for this course, I'm using a very dark theme called Pitch Black theme. I'm using this. It's not really the best theme out there. I'm using this because I'm recording my screen, so I want my code to kind of be a little bit clearer when you're looking at it. So that's why I'm using this. But if I'm working, I like using the Learn with Summit theme. So this is kind of like a very cool theme that you can try out and use. Yeah, so let me just show how this works. If I set this one right here, Dracula, my code is going to be something, I don't know, something like this. Or yeah, something like this. Yeah, let's just take it back to the black one. So, and then you can see so you can, have a better view of my IDE. So that's it. And these are the extensions we need. And what I have to do next is to let me look what I need to do next. I need to run my application by using uv run main.py. So when you initialize your project, by default, you're going to see the main.py right here. And it's basically just stuff like this. So these are basically simple. This is to trigger your application to run. And this is basically a function that is going to run, which is being called right here when your app is run. So when you do main.py uv run, it's going to execute this right here. And what this does is it's going to run this main right here, this function. So whatever you have in this function will be run when you run this file. So let's do that. Come to your terminal again. Again, make sure you're in the root of your project and do uv run main.py. Hit enter, you can see, let me zoom this in. Hello from backend. This is being printed out, is coming from this right here. You can see it right there. See, so that means that application was run, and when it was run, this method was called and this was printed out. So that's it, and we're going to head on next to write our .env. We're just going to start, something very serious. Let's proceed. We are going to have our DB connection. So right here in my root, I'm just going to right click on it and create a file, call it .env. Again, this file is going to contain our database URL. And we don't really want to expose our database URL because we'll be pushing our code to the public repo. So this will be ignored like that. So this is basically the coding standard. So let me call this database URL. And again, as we rightly said, we are going to be connected to a Postgres and a MySQL DB. First of all, let's show how you can connect to a Postgres database. So I'm going to open my Postgres pgadmin, which helps to connect to my Postgres. And as that is coming up, let me also pull my SQL up right there. Let me also pull my SQL Workbench out right there. If you don't have these, you can easily download them, and they're very straightforward to install. Okay, so yeah, so right here for your database URL for Postgres, let me add a comment right here and say Postgres DB connection. That's gonna be DB connection. That's gonna be PostgreSQL and plus ASY and CPG. If you are surprised where this is coming from, if you can go back to your library, to your dependency, so to say, you can see there is this ASY and CPG, asynchronous Postgres. This is going to help us to connect to our Postgres, while for my SQL user, you have this one right here. So we'll be using that to connect to our Postgres DB. So that's going to be PostgreSQL plus your library, then like double column, double dash, then Postgres, which is going to be your Postgres username, then double column your Postgres password, which is your database password, at your DB URL. Mine is in the whole local host, and then your password, which is 54321 for my Postgres, then slash your database name. So I'm going to be creating a database name called Todos, something like that. So yep, so I'm just going to do that now. Let me not forget. So I'm going to open my pgadmin, come to my server right here. This is my PostgreSQL. Then within my database right here, I'm going to create a new one, which is create a database and call that Todos, something like this. And you can see the owner is Postgres, something. So click on that. Todos has been created. So that's going to be called Todos like that. So let also have connection for the MySQL guys. So this is going to be my SQL DB connection. The same way, let me say database URL equal to, that's going to be, since my SQL, then plus we need to make use of this MySQL library right here, plus this one, then double column slash slash your my MySQL username, which is your database username. Mine is root. Then double column my DB password. Mine is 1234567 8. Kind of very simple. And at my DB link to my database, which is the local host, is currently right here in my laptop. And the port for my DB is 3306. Then slash my database name, which I'm going to be calling Todos. Then I'm going to open my workbench, click on my local right here. I'm going to create a database called Todos, like that. Fire that down, and that has been created. If I refresh, you can see Todos has been created like so, and that's going to be it. So I'm just going to comment this one out first. So let's just leave this one, and we're going to head on to have our config.py so we can inject our value right here into our application. Currently, our value resides in our .env, which is not yet in our application. So we need to inject this into our application so we can use it to connect to our actual database. So let's do that. I'm going to inject this into my application. And before I do that, let me first of all structure my folder right here. So I'm going to create an app within the root of my application. And within this app, I'm going to create some folder. I'm going to have my core right there, which will contain my core implementation. I'm going to have my DB, where we'll have my DB connection method. I'm going to have the models right there, which will contain my model. I'm going to have the schema, which will contain my schema, or we call DTO. I'm going to have my router, which will contain my APIs, and I'm going to have, let's say, our server service like that, which will contain our service method. So that's it. And next, I'm going to open to my core right here. And within my core, I'm going to create a new file, call it config.py, and this is going to contain my method, which will help me. Let me rename this correctly. Config. This is going to contain a method that will help me inject my ENV into my application. I'm going to create the class right away, and I'm going to call it settings like that, and that's going to extend a base settings like that. And this should be auto imported for me, but if I click that, I'm not able to import it. I'm going to really show you guys how to do that right away. Now here I'm going to have my base. I'm just going to call this database URL, which is going to be what we have in our .env, and that's going to be database URL right here, which is a reference of that, and that's going to be a string data type. And then I'm going to have my model underscore config. Again, I'm going to import all of these, and that's going to be settings config, and I'm going to say my env underscore file, where we are injecting it from, is going to be from our .env. Then comma, I'm going to say if there are any extra stuff in my env, ignore them. That's going to be ignore like that. Hope that spelling is correct. Then I'm going to export this and create an object of it by saying settings, small letter settings, so we can differentiate it from this one. That's going to be my settings like that. Just create an instance of it and then export it like so. Okay, now if you can see right here, if I try to click on it and click on dots, I'm not able to import all of these. Click on command dots, I cannot import them. I have to import it manually by coming right here and say import. If I won't say import, I'm not even getting a suggestion. So that means that my project is not able to recognize my Python environment, and I'm not able to make use of import right here. So for us to solve that, first thing we have to do is to come to our file right here, come to your file at the top, come to the code at the top right here, click on settings, click on setting, and right here search for auto completion like that. Then search for auto completion. Then at the tab, click on the user, then look for the extension tab right here. Look for your pylons, which is these pylons right here. Click on the pylons and make sure the enable auto import completion is enabled. That's the first thing, so that you can auto import your stuff when you are writing your code. And the second thing we have to do is to select an interpreter for this project. Currently, we do not have an interpreter selected. So for us to do that, click on command, comma, something like that. Okay, command P, yeah, select, click on, is it command P or shift command P? Shift command P. No, just do command P. Either of them is okay. So do command P like that, and at the top right here, search for Python select. So do stuff like this. Command P, and then search for Python. Say Python interpreter. So you're going to see where is it? You're going to see, move it this, but you're going to see Python right here. Select interpreter. So click on that, and then right here you are going to see different interpreter right here from my Python. This one is coming from my, this, what was this called? This my system. This other one is coming from this folder. We can see there is this one interpreter 3.14, which is coming from my environment right here, .env. Let me zoom this, which is this one right here, and from the to do backend project, which is our project name. So by clicking on this, that means that that interpreter has been selected for this project. And because of that, we'll be able to, import, things seamlessly. So if I click on command dot right here, you can see import from pedantic setting. So this stuff has come right there. And then if I don't want to do that, I want to type it manually. If I say import, and you can see, if I say import, you can see I'm able to get some Python stuff right there. So that's basically how it's done. So the first thing, again, let me recap. If you're unable to import, is to come to settings right here and click on setting, and then you can search for auto completion. You can see you can import auto completion. The another one is to say Python interpreter. That should be in our environment, not here. So that's going to come right here, and just click command shift command P, and then search for Python interpreter, then click on select interpreter like that, then select an interpreter for this project. So select the one that is within this one right here. You can see this is our project. Select that, and that's going to use interpreter in your VENV right here that was bundled for you to package application. So when that is done, you can seamlessly import and do your stuff. So I can just click right here, dot, this has been imported, click, select this one that has been imported, settings. No, this should be the settings right here. Okay. So that's it. Setting is not defined. Let me format this. Our base URL, our model config, then settings equals to these settings right here. So I'm just going on, this setting should be like this. Yeah, just should be at the base right here. So we can, create an object of it, and then this can be reused. I'm going to head on to have my database connection method. So within my DB right here, this folder, I'm going to create a new file, call it database, BASE, that should be database. Database.py. And again, I'm just going to, first of all, create the engine by say engine. That's going to be, I'm going to use a method called create async engine. Remember, we want things to be asynchronous because our dependency is an asynchronous kind of dependency. So I'm going to just say, first of all, say settings. I'm going to pass in my database URL. That's going to be settings dot, settings is not there. So let me bring it down by importing it. So I was able, let me just come here and say, let me click on this and check if I can import it. I cannot import it. Okay. So let me import it manually. Say from our settings is in our app.core.config, import settings with a small letter S. And then let me also say from SQL alchemy.ext, something like this, dot unasync co import create section create async engine. Now I'm going to say settings dot database URL. By doing this, is going to help get hold of our database URL right here in our .env. Now I'm going to say command, then just say echo to be false. That's not going to print the operations out for us. So then after that, that can probably just put it in a straight line if you want to do that, or let me just leave it as it is. Then after that, I'm going to move this down. I'm going to create a section factory, which will help to create a database instance. So I'm just going to call that async async ax, or let me see if I can remember this, async section local, like that. That's going to be async section maker, which I'm going to import right here. Let me import it right here, which is right here. Then I'm going to invoke that and say bind to our ng right here, which we created above. And then comma, I can say expires on commit to be false. So what this means is that this is going to help us create our database section by connecting to our database and helping us create our database instance. And what we are doing by saying expire on commit equals to false, we are basically saying that this is going to prevent your database instance from expiring. Let's say you connect to our database and perform an operation by saving a to-do item on the database or getting a to-do. After a database operation has been performed, do not terminate that instance. That's what expire on commit first. Do not expire that database instance. So I'm going to have a method so we can use to get the database objects by saying def means we are creating a method and say get db. Like that, that's going to help us get database instance. I'm going to say now sync with this one right here, and sync section local. I'm going to invoke it and then I'm going to call it as section, SESSION, and then I'm going to yield by yielding this section like so. This is going to help us get a database section. Like so, when I'm calling this, is basically invoking this, which will now help create an engine, use this engine to access our database URL, create a database instance. And right here, I'm basically calling that instance a section and I'm yielding it. So this is going to help us get our database. Now what I'm going to do next is to try to connect to this database so we can check if we can actually make a connection to our DB from this URL right here. So that will be done. So we're going to do that and try to connect to our DB. So what I want to do is whenever my application is run, whenever my project is run, I want to make connection to my DB and try to access my DB. If the connection is successful, I want to print connection successful. If it's not successful, I just want to print it out. That's going to make us know if we were able to connect to our DB. So within my app right here, I'm going to create my main method by saying main.py within my app right here. So remember, in our root project, we have main.py. This is basically for us to run our app, and then inside our app, I have my main, where we can have my methods to, where we have used my FastAPI to create an object of my application. I can configure my middleware right here and define my router and my API. You can actually do everything in your main right here. But most of the time, it's more appropriate to have a code right here to redirect the run to trigger this right here. So let's just do that. So now within the main of my root project, where we have the, underscore name right here, I'm just going to trigger to run the main in our app. So I'm just going to come right here and say, when your app is run, this main method is run. I'm going to say unicorn. Before, let me even import it. Unicorn. Let me see if I can import it I could not import it. Okay, let me just import it manually from here and say import unicorn. Okay, so I'm just going to say, if we remember our dependency, we have our unicorn right there, which is this one right here. Basically our server. I'm going to say unicorn. Import unicorn could not be resolved. Okay, that's not my problem. So unicorn.run. Why is this unable to resolve? Let me see. I mean, that starts here. Okay, unicorn.run. I'm just going to check that out. I want to, when you do uv run main.py, I want to use unicorn to run our application. And that's going to trigger our app.main It's going to trigger our main.py within our app folder. And I want my host to be 0.0.0, which is going to be, that should be .4, another 0. You can probably use localhost. The reason why I'm using this host is that if you're on your server, your localhost, your host becomes the IP of that server. So wherever I decide to deploy my application, my host becomes the IP of that application, of that server. That's what this is. So if I'm running this on my local machine, my host will becomes 127.0.0.1 or localhost. So that's basically what this means. It's going to pick the IP of wherever you are running this project on. Then I'm going to define my port, which is going to be, let's say 80, 85, I don't know, anything. Then reload, because you're on a dev mode, reload is going to be true, which means that whenever there's a code change, that should be reload, spell it correctly. Whenever there is a change of code change, we should reload our application. We should just reload. So in a production, I'm going to turn this to false. So that's it. And within my main right here, within my app, in this app folder and my main right here, I'm going to have a method to create my objects and then run it. So I'm going to first of all come down right here and say app equal to FastAPI. And then I'm going to say title of the project can be to do app, anything you want to call it. Then description can be, let me just say, a nice to do app. Then I can pass the version, which can be anything 0.1.1, 0.1.0, does not mean. Then I think that's all we have to do for now. Then I'm going to pass my middleware by saying app.add, where is it? Add middleware right here, you can see. And that's going to be, I want to pass my course, capital CORS, this should be imported. I'm expecting this to be imported for me, my course middleware, comma, let me click dots, and that's not coming, so let me just import it from, I think my import is not working correctly. I'm not happy with it, okay? So yeah, so that's the FastAPI, from FastAPI import FastAPI. Okay, then I'm going to say, okay, that's already been done right here. Okay, I'm going to say from FastAPI dot middleware dot course import course middleware. Yeah, that one. Then after that, I'm just going to pass in my origins by saying allow origins. It basically means that where do we want to allow to access these, our backend? We want to allow all endpoints, our origin from everywhere. Then I'm going to say allow credential and then some other allow methods and allow headers. Just do those ones like that. Allow credentials true, allow methods, and allow header. Okay. And after that, I am just going to create a simple API by saying app.get. Just create simple get method so we can get to see if this is working. Then when you go to the slash, I'm just going to pass a tags, which is going to be, let me just say, call this root. And then I'm going to create my function, which is called root, and that's going to be, I'm just going to return something by saying, yeah, hello, welcome to your to-do apps, blah, 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 stuff like that. Yeah. Now, that's fine. Now, for us to be able to check if we've connected to our DB, we need to use what we called a context manager or a lifespan. This is going to exist whenever our application is run. So I'm going to come right here at the top right here before I create my app. I'm going to come and say at asynchronous context manager. I'm just going to import this by importing it from context lib right here. And then I'm going to create my function. I'm going to call it lifespan. And I'm going to pass my app to it. I'm going to inject my FastAPI into it. And right here, I want to first of all print to say attempting to connect to DB, something like that. Just want to have some logs. Then I'm going to have my try and catch stuff right there. So what we're basically doing is that we're basically having a try, and I want to just, catch and then throw my exception right there. So that's going to be my exception. And let me import the content engine from our database. That's going to be from our app.db.database import engine, or not engine, not echo, like that. Yeah. Then this test should be imported from typing. Where is it? Should be imported from SQL Academy. Where's SQL Academy? Yeah, that one, like that. It's basically database stuff. So, and then very importantly, try to yield. If you don't yield this, you're not going to, you have a problem. So what we're basically doing right here is this is going to be lifespan. And for us to use this, I'm going to come to my FastAPI right here. Let me destructure this. And after my version, I'm going to say comma lifespan equal to our lifespan. So what this means is that before an object of my FastAPI is created, it's going to try to connect to our database. And when I'm shutting down my FastAPI, it's going to also shut down like that, something like that. Yeah. So let if we have to shut down, let me if we have to shut down right now. So if we are no shut down, this is going to print this stuff. When we are shutting down, we're going to just close or dispose our database connection. That's what we're doing down right here. Okay. So in as much as our FastAPI is up, our database connection is going to be up. As we are closing down, is going to shut down our server, our database connection, and we're going to print these logs out like that. So this upper one is going to be startup. Let me have the comment up right here to say startup and then shut down. So that's basically it. So let me just try to test this out. uv run main.py, enter. Unicorn, okay, we're unable to get unicorn. I'm just going to check why. Right here, I'm unable to, unicorn is not detected. I'm just going to check why I'm unable to get my unicorn, which is already in my project. So I'm going to check that out, and then we are going to continue. Okay, I think I didn't spell it correctly. Yeah, I think it was spelled uni. I don't really know what the name was, but it's supposed to be UVCon. Yeah, not unicorn, UVCon. Yeah, okay. So let's do that again. And I just copied the dependency from here. I just copied the name right here, the name, and then I just pasted it here just to be sure that the spelling was correct. Now, let's run that again. Let me zoom this in. Run. Let's wait for the logs to see if it's able to connect to our DB. And unicorn running on this, okay. Where's my DB log? I'm not getting that. So let me see. Yeah, database connection failed. You can see, which is not a problem. So we are unable to connect. Database connection failed. Multiple exception. Let me check what's going on with my DB. It was unable to connect. Let me see. That's one Postgres 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. I think that's my password at localhost 43. Okay, I think my password is 5432. There is no 1 in my password. I just remember. Password is 5432. So let's stop this and try to run again. You can see right now, attempting to connect to DB, successfully connected to database. So we've been able to connect to DB. And if I Control C, as I stopped it, we can see stopping in progress, database connection pool cleared. So when I stopped my DB, it cleared my connection pool. Now, if I try to pass a different database name and I try to restart, you can see database connection failed because this database does not exist. It is very clear error, very clear right here. All right, so that's it. And I'm just going to test for the MySQL connection. So for our Postgres users, let's try to connect with you. I'm just going to, for our MySQL users, so to say, and I'm just going to come to my MySQL and make sure I have the to-dos database created. I'm going to come right here and Control C to stop this, clear this up, and then uv run main.py. Make sure you have your MySQL stuff. Let's just test this out and attempt it to connect. Let me see. It's going to try. Let's wait for it to do its stuff. You can see successfully connected to my database, which is the MySQL one, as we can see right here. So this means that both of our DB connection worked correctly, and we're just going to head on to, let me see, we're going to move on to have our model and then our ORM. So that's going to be like this. Within my model right here, I'm going to create my model. I'm just going to create a file, call it todos.py. I said todos.p, that's a little bit of weird stuff. todo.py, so let me break this down and zoom that a little bit up right here. So create my class, and that's going to be called base, and that's going to take a declarative. This is supposed to auto import for me, declarative base. I don't like when I type stuff. So let me try to import that again. It's not able to import now. So let me import it manually, which I hate doing stuff. I hate importing manually. I think that's the shortcoming of using a hybrid editor. So I'm just going to say from SQL alchemy.orm import declarative base like that. Okay. Yeah, this one. Okay. After I've done that, I'm going to say pass. This is very important. If you're using MySQL, if you're using SQL Alchemy, which is the most popular ORM, for when you're writing your model, you have to create a declarative base object, which will then be injected and used subsequently. So this is the first thing you have to do. Just create your base, pass in your declarative base. This is going to be your declarative base. So just unfortunately, that's how things are done. Now, let me have my to-do model now. I'm going to call it to-do, and this is going to pass in my base, which again is going to be the declarative base, passing down. And here, I'm going to say underscore table name equal to-do. So this is going to be the name, the table name that will be created for us in our DB. So that's going to be the name. Then I'm going to then pass in my field, which is my ID, and that's going to be mapped. Okay, I need to import this mapped something here, mapped like that. So that's going to be a string, and that's going to be an data type integer, which is our ID, and that's going to be mapped underscore column, which I need to also import right here. Mapped underscore column. So what this does, it is help to create a column for us. I'm going to invoke it like that. So it helps to create a column in our database table for us with the name ID. And right here, I'm going to proceed to say primary key to be true, which means that this is going to be our primary key. And then I'm going to say auto increment to be true, which means that this will be self-managed. We have no business, messing around with this ID. So that's going to create a column in our database. This It's going to create a table for us called to-dos, and within that table, it's going to create a column for us called ID. Let's create other column, which is going to be the title of our to-do. And again, we already know what that is. That should be a mapped. And then, again, you can say mapped string data type. I'm just going to say optional of string data type string. Optional means that it can be null. It can either be a string or a none. Or you can say, if you don't want to use optional, you can say string or none. It's okay, same thing. This is just a modern way to write it, while the optional is for the older ones, for those who are using a Python which version lower than 12. So this is going to work. But for a more modern version, you use this one right here. Where is it? I'm just going back and forth. You use this one right here. Yeah. But who are going to work correctly? So again, this is going to be a column. So let's just invoke the mapped column so you can convert this to a column for us. So I'm just going to copy this and paste so I can have other fields up right here. And then this is the title, and let's also have a description for the next one. This again is going to be optional. And yeah, should I even I think the title should not be make optional. The title should be mandatory. So let me just remove optional from the title. You must pass in a title so we can make the description optional. So I think this is the best logic. So I'm going to have the is completed, which is going to help us to check if our to-do is completed. And this is going to be mapped by, and that's going to be a Boolean data type, true or false, and mapped column. And I'm going to say the default for this value should be, let's say false. I wanted to say true, let's say false. So if you are creating your to-do item, the is completed should be false by default. Now let me have the other field, which is going to be the date it was created. That's going to be created at, and that's going to be data type date time. That should be imported from date time, as we can see right here. And equal to mapped column, very important. And I'm going to have a default value by saying server default equal to a function, and dot now is going to get the current time and then set it as a created at. So let me also copy this and have the updated at, which is going to be the date time you updated it to do. So updated at again is going to be a date time, and mapped column, which means that we are creating a column on our database, and that's going to be server default equal to function.now, which is correct. It's going to create this. I'm just going to say this should be update. This should only update when there's an update. An update equal to function func.now. So what this does is that if you create an object of a to-do, the updated add value is going to be the current time. Whenever you're updating that to-do item, this on update will be triggered, and then the current time as at that time will then be the new value of the updated add. So that's it for our to-do, and this is how ORM work. And by doing this, is going to auto generate the necessary SQL queries for us that will help us to auto create a database in our table called to-dos, help us create the columns, and also help us with the necessary code that can help us to add data, update data, and do other stuff. So we're going to head on to have our schema set up. Let me head on to have my schema. So schema, it's more like a DTO, or what we call a data transfer object. So it's basically going to be the class that will be used to receive the object to create a to-do, or we want to use to return a to-do response back to our API. So let's do that. That's going to be within the schema right here. I'm going to create a new file, call it to do, and all files should end in .py. So here I'm going to have my class. I'm just going to call it to do base. This is going to be used to create a to do and do all the stuff. So it's going to expect a base model. It's going to help us to register these as a schema, and it's going to have a title, which is a string, and then a description, which is also a string too. And because the description is going to be optional, I'm just going to say it should either be a string or it should be none, like that. And by default, let's make it to be none. Yep, so that's going to be our base, and let's also have to update our to-do. So that's going to be a class. If you want to update our to-do, we're going to be using this second class to collect the response or the request. We're going to use it to collect the request, and that's going to be to-do, no, to-do model, not space exception. What's that? To-do model, and I'm going to have my title, description, and is completed. All of these will be optional, which means that you can decide to update your title or the description or the is completed. And here I'm going to have something called model config, and that's going to be just any additional thing you want to do, which is going to be config dictionary, and that's been imported. Any extra thing you want to do, we can have them within this configuration right here. For example, we can say, I want to enable, camel cases. By default, if you are using this without any of this, you can, in your body, you have something like is completed. But we can say allow user to also say is completed. This is camel case. So I want users to also be able to receive a camel case request from the front end. I'm just going to say alias generator, and that's going to be to underscore, where is it? To camel, like that, where is it? Equal to camel. I need to import this one again. That's import it from alias generator. So I'm going to say from pedantic.alias generators, then import to camel. We also have to Pascal. You can see Pascal to snake, stuff like that. So yeah, so let me just get rid of this. This will help us to pass in a camel case. We have to convert this snake case to camel case. You can also have order by saying populate by name and other stuff, just have them up like that. Okay, so let's also have a class that will be used for response. That's going to be to do response. And again, this is expected. This is going to have everything in our to do base right here, which is the title and the description. Let me copy the to do base here. And in addition to the to do base, which means that in addition to the title and description, I also want the ID also to be a part of the response. And then also want is completed, and then is completed, created out, and then updated out. So I'm going to import the date time like that. So this is going to be our schema, and we'll be using these to receive the body to create a to-do. We'll use this to receive the request to update a to-do, and we'll use this to return a response whenever we've, done something. Whenever we've gotten the response from the DB and want to return the object, we use this to return. So also, a best practice is for us to have another file which will be used as a generic response. So we want to have a wrapper that will be used for all API response. That's going to contain the status code, the message, and then the data. The data in this case is going to be the to-do response here or any other thing. So within my schema, I'm going to call this response. Again, .py, and first of all, I'm going to have my type variable like this. Again, you're not to complete it. Okay, I think that's better. And that's going to be a T. And then I'm going to have my class, and that's going to be an API response. Call it an API response, and it's going to take in a base model, from pedantic, and then a generic from typing, and then that's going to be of T, type T. And that's it. So what fields do I need? And that's going to be, yeah, it's everything right here. Everything is right. So what field do I need? I need the status and then the message and then the description. So let's have it up right there. The status, the message, the data, and yep. So our what's this? Our type var should be imported from typing, not AST. So remove that one. Put the comma right here. It should be imported from typing, our type var. Okay, so I can add some model config right here again as usual and say config dig like that, not like dig, but I mean dictionary. So I'm just going to say from attribute true and exclude none to be none. So exclude none means that if there are any of these value whose data is not there, then do not add it along with the response. So that's it for that. And what should I do next? We need to head on to have our service class. Let me see. Okay, now before we have our service class, let's persist this data. Let's persist this so that if we go to our DB right now, if I say select, no need for every select all from to dos like that, you can see there's no, I don't have my table is empty right now. So let's persist this data. Let's perform a migration so that this model right here can be created. This table can be created in our database so we can get to move on. Let's perform our migration. And again, the first thing for me to do is to just run this command, uv run alembic init, then you dash t, then you can pass in what async, then call it migration. So when you run this, it's going to generate some folders and some file for us, and we're going to see. Let me close all of this for now, close all, and yeah, let me also close my app too, so we can get to see the changes. So within your terminal, paste it right there, or you can write it out. Let me zoom it. UV run alembic init dash t asynchronous migration, enter, and it's going to create a migration folder for me right here. And then you can see the alembic.ini file. We don't really have to mess with this, leave it as it is. And in this migration right here, let me put it down. Within the migration folder, open the migration right here. You're going to see env.py. Click on this right here, and then we're going to, just do some little modification right here. So we down after this config right here, I'm just going to say config dot set main option, and then I'm just going to say SQL alchemy. That's going to be, you can remember we're using SQL alchemy as our ORM. So SQL alchemy, which are ORM, dot URL, and I'm going to say settings. Let's get our URL, settings dot database URL. This setting should be small letter s. That should be small letter s right here. The object of the settings coming from our config within our app. If we can remember, call this one right here. So we can get hold of this, our DB URL. So that's what we need to do. Then that's the first thing we need to do. I can just add a comment right here to say I added this. I done something just to be sure, so when you look at my code, you can get to see the one I added and the one I say. Let me say we added this. Then after you've done that, the second thing you have to do is to register your model. You can see down right here. We are being told that add your model metadata object here. For auto-generated support from this is just like the default one that was created for us. We need to modify this and add our own. So I'm just going to say I modified this. We modified this just to say the ones we did 2 and then 1, just to show the changes that we made. So for this one, I'm just going to uncomment these 2 out, down, And then this is going to be from my model right here. Let's import it from app.models. This is our model. Import, our model was called to-dos. Then right here, I'm going to say metadata is going to be the to-dos dot base dot metadata. You can get rid of this one down. No, get it. So that's just what we need to do. Just this one and this one, that's all. Okay, so that's it. And after you've done this, let's perform a migration. After we've done this, I have the directions right here. The next is for us to execute this command to create our migration, and then we can persist it to our DB. So I'm just going to copy this right here. There's no need for us to type it. You can go on the AI platform, just type, migrations in FastAPI using SQL or RM. It's going to show you the command. So we don't need to have that in mind. Just copy that, and again, I'm going to pull this up right here. Clear this, paste it right there. Run UV run Alembic revision auto generate initial migration. You can say initiate, anything you want to call it. Enter. And you can see it has created some kind of crazy schema table for us, which has not been persisted. If I come right here and I execute this or I refresh, it has not been persisted. You just have the Olympic version, which has been generated for me. So I need to persist this to my DB. I'm going to come right here and run this command. Very simple. And paste it right there. UV run Olympic upgrade head, enter. And that's going to, okay, virtual require length of, okay, I'm having a problem with my migrations. Okay. Yep. So that means my primary key is not okay. I need to make modification to my model right here. So come to my to-dos right here. Let me look at the problem I'm having here. And primary key is mapped by an integer. Okay. Primary key should be true. Auto increment should be true. Okay. All right. Let me see. Which other problem? Let me look at the error. I think the error is a little bit crazy. Let me just copy the error and ask my Gemini AI to help me, make do justice to it. Copy it right there. Copy my model as well. And let me just see what's going to tell me. The core problem is asking me table title virtual require length of, okay. So it's telling us to, let me see. It's telling us to specify a character right here to the title, okay? You can see this is it. We are told to specify for our mapped column, we are told to specify a character, something like that. So I'm just going to, let me see, I'm just going to do that. So copy this one right here. Let me just type it. I don't need to copy it. Let me just type string and then your character right there, okay? So come back right here and say for the column, the title, I'm going to say string, which is from Ask SQL Academy, and then my total value for the title should be 255. That should be the length. For my description, I'm going to say string. The total value should be like 1000. For the total character in my description, I want it to be 1000. So that's it. We need to do this again, and I'm going to perform the migration again. Let me clear this, and then let's do that again. We need to perform a new migration. So copy this, generate migration schema. Let's have a new migration and then call it initial migration. Just say updated. It's gonna create a new migration for me, which is error failed, target database is not up to date. Okay. We assume non-transactional. Okay, let me just don't really want to waste time there. Let me just don't want to debug that on my own. Let me need a helper, a helpmate to help me debug this. Okay, delete a broken migration stuff. Let me see. Okay, run this. Okay, let me see. Drop. Okay, we need to SQL. Okay, we need to drop the existing migration. Okay, let me do that. Come right here. This is the existing migration file right here. Let me delete it. Drop it. Drop table. Is it? Yeah. So let me delete the existing migration file. Let me perform the migration again. That's what AI told me. So let me perform the migration again. Fail target database is not up to date. See the same thing. All right. So let me see. Let me see. Okay, let me do that again. Target DB. So let me refresh this DB. I think that was removed. So what's the problem? Refresh this right here. Okay, refresh this right here. Table. The table was, I think the table was not removed. Let me drop table again. Drop now. Right. So let me refresh. Yeah, I think that has been dropped. Okay, so let me do that again. Perform migration again. Enter. And okay, let me just move on. I'm still getting the error. Let me just do this to persist the stuff like that. Let me see. Okay, again, I think this was not properly done. Let me refresh this. Let me drop. Okay, table. And then drop that table. Now refresh. Table is gone. Okay. Yep. So let me clear this up and do that again. And let me say new. So we're still having the error. Let me see. Let me run this one right command right here. Okay. Kind of a little bit creepy. Let me run this one. And let me get rid of the head right there. Let me remove the migration. Let me remove this migration right here. Okay, let me just tell AI this is what I found, then you can help me remove it. Okay. Yep. Say, can you remove the migration so I recreate it? Something like that. Delete the migration file. Okay, I don't really like doing this, but let's just delete the migration file and let me see. Yeah, that migration file has been deleted, so not the entire folder, that particular file. So let's create it again. And let me see my database table. Yeah, let me remove what I have right here because this is always generating a migration for me. Let me drop this one. Does not really mean, but yeah. So I've removed the old one. Let me generate, initiate the migration again. This one. Okay, that's generated, and let me run the head like that. You can see migration was successful if I come to my DB and I select off from to-dos. What's going on? Let me refresh this one. Tables right here, and you can see I have my to-dos. It was actually called to-dos. Yeah, select off from. I did specify the database name, which is to-dos. That's kind of, I don't know. That's okay. That's a little bit weird. Yeah. So right now our migration is successful and we can see that the database was persisted. So the problem we had was very simple. When I created my database columns right here, title, description, I didn't specify the value that the column should, especially for a string data type, you need to specify the maximum value that can be stored right here if you're using a MySQL. But for a Postgres, it does not really mean it default to, I think, to this value for Postgres. So this should be done for MySQL people, so you can do that. So let's do the same migration for a Postgres. So I'm going to change my ENV to Postgres so we can target the Postgres DB. If I come to my Postgres right now and I to-dos and I refresh and I come to my schema and I come to my tables right here, you can see there's nothing right there. So let us execute this query and say let me say new, something like that. And that's been okay, the database up to date. Okay, let me just upgrade this head so you can, you can make use of that. So execute that, and that's been done. So let me check my Postgres now. If I refresh, you can see my to-dos right now has been created. As you can see, if I open my Postgres query 2, not that one. If I open this query 2, which is the query 2, I say select all from to-dos. You can see now my table is there. So this has worked correctly. We're going to head on to have our service method and then our API. Then we test this out and then we head on with our front end. So let's head on to have our service. So again, within my app right here, I'm going to my services right here. And I'm going to create my service class. I'm just going to call this todos.py. And that's going to contain some of my, I'm going to have a method. I think we've been using to do all the time. Let me just call it to do underscore service to a little bit. We've had too many to do's, so to do underscore service like that. That's a little bit better. And we're going to be having method to get all the to do, to get a to do by ID, to create and then to update a to do and then to delete. So it's kind of very fun. So create your method to get all your to do's and call it get all to do's like this. What you need to do, you pass your database, which is what we remember. We want to have access to our DB to, be able to connect to our database and get our to do. So I'm going to import this right here, and that should be imported from our SQL Alchemy .ext.asynchronous stuff like that. And this method is expected to return, which is dash arrow. It's expected to return a list. A list should be from your typing when you want to import it. It's expected to return a list of to-dos. No, let's not use capital letter L. Let's use small letter list. I'm just a little bit list, yeah. List of to do, which is going to be to do, which is from our schema. Or okay, let's say from our to do, our database. So we're accessing DB right here. So here I'm going to say results, which is going to be result from our database query. That's going to be we are awaiting our database dot execute, and I'm going to have my select, then want to select to do, which is our model, to do dot where, then the where's my to do, where to do dot id is equal to, am I even sure I'm doing the right thing? No, I'm not doing the right thing. I think I'm a little bit lost right here. So I'm actually writing a query to get a to do by ID. So To get our to do, that's going to be await db.execute, select to do, that's going to be order by, select to do dot order order by should autocomplete. What's going on? Dot order by, that's going to be to do dot created at dot descending. You want to get the latest to do first. Let me invoke the descending like that. And then I'm going to return the list of everything. That's going to be the result. Then dot scalars. Is this? Yeah, scalars. And then I'm going to invoke that and say dot all, and then invoke that method. So let me just explain this. So what basically doing is we are waiting because it's actually an asynchronous operation right here. We are waiting, we are having connected to our database. We are accessing the existing database section we have, which was created when our app was run. And we are basically saying that the database.execute, we're executing this command. Everything right here, it's a command. And what's the command? We are accessing our database table by saying select to do, which is our database name, and we are getting all the value from our DB, and we are ordering them by the created that we're getting the latest value first. So which means that if we have 1,000,000 data, we are getting the last one, the latest data that was added first, and that will be returned right here, and we're just getting all the value and returning it right there. So this is expected to return a list of the to-do right here. So that's it. So let's also have to async def, which is a function to get a to-do by ID. And then that's going to take in this right here. Let me just copy this database here. And since we want to get a to-do by ID, we need to also pass the to-do ID, which is going to be an integer. To-do underscore ID, which is an integer like that. And then this is going to return a to-do, just one object. So again, I'm going to have my result set, which is going to be results, which we are awaiting our db dot what's going on right here, execute, and then I'm going to say select. What do you want to select? Access our to-do database, and then I'm going to say dot where, which means that we don't want to get everything, we want to get particular data, dot where, and what we want to do, we'll say where the to-do ID, which we want to get, is, let me even do this right here, is equal to the to-do ID that we are passing in. So I only want to get the to-do whose ID is equal to the ID that is coming in. So that's going to get that item. I'm going to say to-do now equal to the result, which we've gotten from our dp dot scalar one or none, invoke that. And if there is none, if not to do, if we do not have that item, I'm just going to raise a HTTP exception. Else, I'm just going to return the data. So HTTP exception should be imported from FastAPI, which is this one right here. And status should be imported from FastAPI 2, which is going to be, where's the FastAPI, comma, status, like that. Import, why am I importing select? Select should be coming from the SQL Academy. Just going to say from, this is wrong. It's going to be from SQL Academy import select. So also be careful on where you are importing your stuff from, okay? So we will not, get into problem. So what's this one? Schema, no, we don't need this one. So that's it. And let me just call this to do data like that, data like that. Okay, So this is going to help get a to-do by ID, which is an individual to-do. And let's also have a method to create a to-do. So that's going to be moving down right here. And async function and call that create underscore to-do. And again, that's going to take in our DB data like this one. DB data, which is this one. And then comma, we need to also pass in the to-do object, which is going to be, it's a to-do to create. Let's just call it that way. And that's going to be our to-do base, which is from our schema. So let's not forget that. And then I'm going to, what is going to return? This is going to return the created to-do, which is the to-do. So moving down, let me move this a little bit back. Now what do I want to do? I'm going to say new to-do equal to to-do. Then I'm just going to use this and say to-do.create.model dump. So what this model dump means is that in this our object which we are passing in the to-do is going to collect the ones that have data and is going to convert them to this right here. So if there's any data that, oh, I'm not supposed to click on this one. So if there's any value here that is not present, or if there are extra fields that do not correspond to our to-do object right here, it's going to ignore them, pick the one that is there, and then convert it and populate it as this to-do right here. So that's what this model dump does. Just a straight way to just say, if you have a title, add it. If there's no description, remove it. Just a straightforward method. So after I've done this, I'm going to then persist this to my DB by saying db.add. And then I'm going to say, what do I want to do? Add a new to-do, which is this object right here, to our DB. Move this down, which is this one right here. Now you've done that, what do I want to do? I'm going to await the result by saying db.commit. So commit is that I'm going to persist the data into my database. And I'm going to await another thing by saying db.refresh. And then that's going to be the new to-do. So that means that this new to-do right now is going to be the to-do that has been saved in our DB. So all the value you have right here, the existing value of this new to-do object will now be the value that was committed in our DB, including the ID which was saved. Remember, this did not contain the ID. The new to-do had no ID. But right now, as we are refreshing it, we are passing in the saved ID down to it. So then I'm just going to return the new to-do like so. And that's pretty cool. So that's it to create to-do. Let's also have to update a to-do. This is going to be very straightforward, just as we did. And it's going to take in your DB and then your update to-do data. So let me just copy this one right here. And then say to-do to update, something like that. And this is going to return a to-do for me. So right here, as we did before, I'm going to first of all say to let me just say existing to do. That's going to be, I'm going to await my database, which I'm going to be using to update to do. I'm going to say await. As a matter of fact, if I'm passing in my DB, I need to pass in the to do ID because we want to update a to do. So I'm just going to say to do underscore ID, which is an integer, like so. So await this method get to do by ID, which we created above, get to do by ID, passing your DB and then passing the to do ID. This is going to help get our existing to do if it's there. And then I'm going to say update data, which is to do to update, like that. That's going to be to do to update dot model dump. We already understand what model dump is. And then we're going to pass a query to say exclude onset to be true, which means that if there's any value that were not set in the to-do base, is it to-do base? I think this should be to-do to update, not the base. So this should be to-do to update here. Yeah. So if there's any value in the to-do to update data that we are not passing in, let's ignore that. That's what this does. We're going to remove those values and set it as the updated data. And then I'm going to, just update it right away by coming right here and say, that's going to be existing to do. That's on for key in updated data.items, which is all of these. We are setting the attributes right there, committing it and then refreshing it and then returning it. So this is just going to help us update our to-do. Lastly, let me quickly have to delete our to-do. It's very straightforward. I'm just going to have it up so we will not waste time. So that's it to delete a to-do. What are we doing? We are passing the to-do ID and we're basically getting the to-do by ID. After you've gotten it, I'm just going to say db database.delete that to-do we've gotten. Is going to remove it from our database. We're going to commit and return nothing. So that's it for our service. And what we have to do next is to have our API or our router, which we then pass where we call this service from. Now for us to have our route, I'm going to close all of these so we can have some breathing space. And right here within my panel, I'm going to go to my router right here. I'm going to create a new file. I'm just going to call this todo underscore API.py. This is going to have contain our API. And it's going to be very straightforward. The first we have to do is to create our router object by saying router, which is going to be API router. Import it from FastAPI, API router right here. And then I'm going to say my prefix equal to, it can be anything, let's say /todo. So what it means is that before I do that, let me add a tag, which I'm just going to call todos. So what this prefix means is that if you go to your URL /todos, it's going to call whatever you are going to be having right here. Now, before we proceed, we need to tell our main app where our router is, where our API is. So I'm going to come to my main right here, the main within the app, and I need to register this route. Remember, this is now our API. We need to register these in our app so we can get to know where we can forward requests to that stuff. So I'm going to come right here and register the router and say below the middleware right here, I'm going to say at app, let me just say app dot include router, and that's going to be todo underscore router. Before I will do that, let me even import this router right here. So that's going to be, let me import it right here. So that's going to be, say, todo router. That's going to be from app dot routers import todo API. So that's going to be right here. Todo API dot router. So this is going to help us to register. Very, very important. So you have to, let me add a command, say register your todo router here. Yeah. So if you don't do this, there's no way the application will be able to access this router right here. Okay. But registering that router, if any route goes to /todos, is going to get to know that and then trigger this, like that. So let's continue with our method. So First of all, let's have a method to get all the to-do. So that's going to be at router. Why am I using at router like that? Make sure your annotation is at router dot. What do you want to do? A get request. So if this is a get request and the path is the root, that means if you on localhost 8085 slash to-dos and this is the root right here, then you want to do something. First of all, the status code for a successful response is going to be status. This status should be coming from FastAPI right here. Status should be status dot http 200 dot OK. So a successful response will be a 200 OK. Then let's have a method like that, which is going to be a get request. They say let's call the function name get to do's. And then this is expected to take in our DB, which is going to be an async, our async section like that. And that was being imported from, let me import it, say from SQL ext dot async cio, something like that. Import your async, this one right here, async section, this one. Okay, so this is going to be passed in, and I'm going to say equal to the value of this database is going to be, say, depends, which is going to be FastAPI, is going to be the get underscore db from our database. Okay, so that is it. And one little problem, this depends right here should be, yeah, it should be there, so that's fine. Okay, so then this is expected to return something, so I'm going to say it's expected to return an API response of a list. This should be small letter. I'm always fond of having capital letter. If a list of to do response like that, first list of to do response like that, and I'm going to say to do's equal to await our to do service dot get all to do's, and I'm going to pass my database down like so, and then I'm going to return the data by building my API response and saying the status is going to be status dot http 200 dot OK. What's going on? http 200 dot OK, and then I'm going to say the message will be to do's gotten, will be anything you want to pass in, and then the data right now is going to be the to-dos we've gotten from our service, which is going to be the to-dos like that. So that's it. Again, let me destructure this so I can explain this properly. Now, what we have right here is that this is a route, which is a get request. We are basically subscribing to this base router right here and saying when a get request is coming in and is within the root of your application, If it's a successful one, the HTTP status should be success. Now, this, when a request is coming in, this is what should be method that should be fired. The first thing you have to do is to get the database instance and then set it as DB, which is an asynchronous section. Get the database section, the existing database section, which is the connection to the database. Get hold of that database, save it as the DB, and you are expected to return an API response of a list of to-do response. Now that you've gotten the database instance, call the to-do service and then pass the database down to the get all to-do method. This is going to use the database instance to access our DB to get all the to-do and then return it right here. Now that we've gotten the to-dos from our service method, we want to build the response. We're basically building the API response. We are passing the status right there, the message, and then the data, which is going to be our to-do. Remember, our API response was what we built in our response. And we basically said that all our API should return this method right here, should return an API response, all our API. So whatever, either you are doing a delete request, a get request, a post, this should be the format of the response we will be returning so we can structure our app properly. And that's what we are doing right here. So that's it for getting to-dos, and we're going to be very fast to have a method to save a to-do. I'm going to call that post a to-do. So we've kind of, done a lot of talking right here. So let me just be very fast with this one. And this has been pre-done quickly. And that was to create a to-do. So again, we're basically saying router.post. If this is a post request, then passing the to-do base. The to-do base is basically the body that we pass down from our API, either from your front end right here. It can be the body coming from your front end to add a to-do, title, description. This will be bundled into a base to-do, which is this one right here. Where is it? Base to-do and passed in. Then again, we are getting the database instance and saving it as DB. Both of these data would be passed to the create to-do method of the API service, which will then use that to create a to-do. And after that, it's going to return the new to-do created as new to-do. Then we're going to bundle this new to-do into our API response, passing the status code, the message, and then the created to-do, and then we return it right here, which can then be returned back as a response of a successful to-do creation. That is it. Let's also have to get a to-do by ID, which again is very fun. This will get a to-do by ID. Again, it's a get request. When you go to your get request and you pass in the ID to the URL, which we usually call the parameter, and it's going to call the get to do method. And again, we are passing the to do ID, and then we are getting the database instance. Both of these will be passed down, and we'll call the method to get it to do by ID. If the data has been gotten, we're going to return this API response down. Let's also have to update a to-do, and then we have to also delete a to-do. So same way, very simple. The only change is the object that we're passing at the body and then the method. So this is going to be to update a to-do. Again, the method, it's a put request. And if you go to users, go to /update, then the ID is going to be passed down, and then we are collecting the ID right here, which is being passed down. And we are also collecting the body of the to-do to be updated, which is the to-do update. And the database session is being created and passed down. And these three data will be passed down to the update to-do method. They will be worked on, and the resulting data will be bundled into the API response and then returned successfully. Now, let's also have to delete a to-do, which is the last one. And that's it right here. Again, it's a delete request, and this is the part. Part can be anything. And then we are passing the to-do ID one to delete, and then the database section, which we are getting and passing down, is going to make use of the to-do ID, and we delete the to-do with this ID by calling the delete to-do from the service method. So that's it for our API. And we're going to head on to test this out. To test this out, I'm going to first of all run my application. Again, before you do that, always make sure that your router or your app has been registered in your main. So if you've not done that, come to the main.py within the app folder, add this stuff right here, app.include router, and then your API, then the router. So I'm just going to run my app by using uv run main.py. Okay, we are having problem with, we are not able to run this. Let me complete model class and stuff. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm importing some wrong stuff right now. I might not be able to check everything. So let me just tell, okay, pedantic v2. I think I'm having some crazy stuff. Let me see what the problem is. And then we know what to do. So let me come to my service right here. Go over the error and see what is going on. Okay. All right. So import datetime. Okay, you're probably okay. I'm not importing the datetime correctly. Okay, probably, yeah, that's correct. I'm not importing the datetime properly. So let me look for where that problem is, and let me see. Come to my API. No datetime is there. Come to my service class. No datetime is there. Come to my module, which is my schema. Yeah, this is it. So schema, this is it. So yeah, use import from datetime, import datetime. So this is how it should be. So again, Control C, clear this kind of creepy stuff. And let me clear this up again. Close all. uv run main.py. Everything has run correctly. So let's test this out. I'm going to be using Postman. Postman is a testing client for us to test. So I'm going to use Postman. I'm going to come right here and create a, let me say create, I don't know. I want to create a new collection, I'm going to call that to do, like that, or to do's. Then right within that collection, I'm going to add, this is the folder, right? I'm going to add a new request, and I'm just going to call it get all to do's, like so. Again, our port is running on, our app is running on port. What's the port? Let me see, 8085. So that's going to be localhost 8085 8080 slash to do slash just to do's, and that's a get request and send. Yeah, all our to do have been fetched, but we have no data, which is empty. The API have worked. So duplicate this and let me add a to do right here. That's going to be a post request, and that's going to be called add to do, and that's going to be a post request. And I'm going to click on the body right here, click on the raw, and here should be the JSON selected. And let me allow this to load. Then create an object, which is like a JSON dictionary object, and that's going to be the title. I can just say that's comma, and I can add a description. Yeah, Let me just say title should be to write some code or to write some code. Description is probably, I don't know, so I can learn to code, something like that. Yep, so click on send. Can see to do created. Let's create more. So visit grandma added. So let me say this time around I want to pass a description. Let me say to eat burger and then to watch football. Yep, so if I try to get all to do's again, we can see we have some pretty data up right here, which is a little bit. We have our title, description, the is completed, the created, the updated that. So let's also have to update to do, which is going to be update to do. That's going to be a put request, and the path should be slash to do's slash the to do one to update. Let's update the first one, and then click on the body raw, the JSON right here, and then I just want to update the description only, and that should be an description, and then say I was updated, something like that. Send method not allowed. Okay, let me see what is the problem. Come to my API right here, router, and to update a to do, that should be, let me see, that should be slash update. So I didn't pass that correctly. That should be slash to do slash update slash the ID. Send to do updated successfully. I was updated. We can see the value right here. So let's finally delete a to do, delete to do, and that's going to be a delete request. And that's going to be slash delete slash, that's going to be to do ID2. Or let me delete the first ID1. To do ID1. Send to do deleted. If I try to delete it again, you can see to do not found right here. So let me get it to do by ID. This is going to be the last. And let's get to do by ID, and that's going to be slash to do slash one. That's going to be get request. Send to do not found because it was recently deleted. So let me get to do two. Send, and to do has been retrieved. So if I try to get out to do's again, that's bam, I have all the item. If I go to my DB and I try to get all my to do, you can see they are both right there, seated right here. So that's it for our to do's. Our app has worked correctly, and we're going to head on to have the front end implementation. We'll head on to have our front end implementation in Nuxt. Now, Nuxt website is nuxt.com. It's a full stack JavaScript framework which can be used to build full stack applications. So with Nuxt, you can actually write both your backend and your front end code together using Nuxt.js. But for the sake of this course, I just want to use it only for the front end part. If you click on the get started right here, it's going to show you some steps to install it and to create a project. So I'm just going to move down to creating a project. And by having this command, we can easily create a project. So for those using Yen or any of these other ones right here, you can select that tab and copy this. So for me, I'm using NPM and I want to create my project. So you're going to copy this right here and then paste your project name. So I'm going to open my terminal like this. And I'm going to cd into this folder where I want my projects to be. If I do ls, it's going to be here. So I want my project front end in Nuxt to be here. So I'm going to paste the command right there. Then I'm going to click space and then the name of the front end. So I'm just going to call this Nuxt front end. Click enter, and it's going to take some time before it creates. So let's just wait, and it's going to prompt us on what to select. Select minimum, which is the minimum setup for Nuxt 4, which is the latest. So click enter, and it's going to download our template, and it's going to prompt us to select our package manager. Again, let me select npm at that's the current one on my system. Click enter. And why I want to initialize a git, you can click yes. And it's going to do its own stuff and generate this project called Nuxt Frontend for us. Now come this question, would you like to browse and install modules? Let's just click on the default, which is no, and that has been created. So what I'm going to do next is to seed into this project and then run it. So I can do that right here, but I prefer to open it up in my Visual Studio Code before I run that. So I'm going to open my code editor right here and click on new Windows like this, and just open the folder right there. And that's going to be to do right here, and that was called to do Nuxt front end. And that's been opened up, and I need to run this project. So let me close this right here. I'm going to pull in my terminal right here, and again, as you rightly said, the command to run is npm run dev. If you go over the package right here, you can see when you do npm run dev, it's going to trigger the Nuxt dev, which is going to run the project. So let's do that. Npm run dev, and that's running on localhost 3000. So if I come right here and paste it right there, you can see this is the default file that we can see right here in our Nuxt. And yep, so again, before we move on, let's get a quick overview of the files right here, and then we start working on them. Now, if I move down, you can see this is a ts config. This is a configuration for TypeScript, and over up is the readme file, which probably contains some, readme on how to run your app. Moving up is the package.json. This basically contains information about our project, our scripts that we can use to build, run the project, and prepare it for production, and also contains our dependency. We can see we are using the view, the Nuxt, and then the view router. Moving up is the package lock. This basically contains a history of the dependency we have used over time. Then the Nuxt.config right here, this basically contain configuration, so we can have some configurations right here if we want to. So there are a lot of configurations. For example, if we're going to do something, we're going to register our styling file right here, so the project can load it. So that can be done. We're going to do that. So this basically contains where you have configurations for your application. Let's say you want to implement an SEO, stuff. You want to define which route should only be allowed to access this app. So all those configurations are done right here. Moving up, we have the public folder right here. This basically contains public things like static data, icon, and stuff like that. So again, the node modules contains the actual file for our dependencies right there. Then up right here is the app. This is where we'll be having our implementation. And right now, it only contains the app.view. Here contains the Nuxt router, which is basically going to be using where our page we sit on, one will be used for navigation, where the different pages we are in is going to be seated on. Then we have the Nuxt.welcome. So if I comment this out right now, if I get rid of the Nuxt.welcome and I come back right here, you can see it's blank. So which means that this Nuxt.welcome was a component that all of these are coming from. So I'm just going to get rid of the Nuxt.welcome. I'm just going to say H1 and say hello welcome, and if I come right here, you can see hello welcome. So that is it, and I'm just going to head on to quickly structure my folder and we'll start writing our code. I'm going to structure my folders right here and then head on to have the navbar. So again, for those who might be surprised what this Nuxt route announcer is, which you can find in your app.view, this one right here, Nuxt route announcer. This is basically is basically there for visually impaired user, for those who cannot probably see properly. So it's going to help to announce to them what is going on the page, what is the next page we are going to when the user clicks on, let's say, to this page and is visually impaired. This announcer is going to announce the next page like you are moving to the to-dos page. So that's basically what this does. It has no, if you remove it, you can see it does not affect our application, basically for visually impaired users. So I'm just going to add that comment so you can understand what this is doing right here. Or let me add it right here and say for, I think that's not the best way to add comments. So that's going to be, let me, something like this. And yeah, I think it's not still expected. It's expected to be on one line. So let me just copy this and have it up right there. Okay, or you know what? Let me just do something like this. I really want everything to be on this right here. Yep, that's good. That's good. Then I'm just going to add a comment to say for visually impaired, users like that. Yeah, something like that. That's a little bit better. Or let me just put it above the announcer like this. Yeah, it's a little bit better. Okay. Now let me, within my root right here, let me structure my folder and I'm going to come to the app right here. Everything, remember, all our implementation should be within the app. In my app, I'm going to add a new folder, call it asset. It's going to contain our CSS styling. And again, within the app, I'm going to add a new folder called components. It's going to have our navbar and our footer. Again, within the same app folder, I'm going to create a new folder, call it pages. It's going to contain our page where we have our home page, to-dos page, edit to do, add to do. Those will reside in this folder. Then also, lastly, let me have my services. The services job is basically to contain methods that will help us to make API call to our backend, to fetch data, to add data, to edit data, to delete data. So all the methods will be here, and from here we'll be making API call to our backend to help connect or interact with our backend. And before we move on, I really want to define my styling so we can register that. So within my asset right here, I want to have my global styling. I'm going to create folder called CSS, and within this CSS folder I'm going to create a file called, let me say, globals, can be anything .css, and here I'm going to have my styling. Again, this is not going to be a CSS course. I'm just going to be pre-writing the code and just having it up right here. Now what I'm doing right here is basically I'm defining some color variables which will be used for our project, and this can easily be referenced by accessing the name, which is this. This is how to define variables in CSS. You define a variable and this is going to be the value, and you can access the value by making reference to this. When I say colon root, this is going to be injected into the root, and wherever you are, you can easily have access to these data right here, these variables right here. Moving down, these are just some generic styling where I'm giving the entire body, a font family of, sans serif, which is this inter right here, and then just some A and stuff like that. So now we need to register this so this can be reloaded during build time. So I'm going to come to my nuxt.config right here, and that can be done anywhere within your define Nuxt config. I'm going to say CSS. This is going to be a CSS definition, and I'm going to register this styling right here, which is a global styling, which is going to help inject this into our application. And I'm going to come right here and say reference the style. That's going to be, this means it's going to be your application root slash assets. I believe that was what we call it, slash CSS slash define name, which was global.css. Global.css, globals, I think with an S, something like that. And then I'm just going to put a comma so other stuff can be loaded. So this is going to help to load our CSS styling into application, and then it can then be used globally. This styling can then be infected into all our pages and all our components. So we're going to move on to the component right here to have our navbar and our footer components. So let's head on to have our navbar, and within my component right here, I'm going to create a file, call it navbar.view, and this is going to, that's basically the files. It must end in .view, and I'm going to have my script tag, which is going to be script like this. This is going to be where we'll have our TypeScript code or our JavaScript code. Now moving down, I'm going to have another tag called template, and this is going to contain our template code, which is our HTML code. And moving down, I'm going to have a script called my, I said script, I'm going to have my styling right here, style tag, and this is going to contain my style. This way I'm going to have my CSS style. Now this is basically the structure for a Vue application or a Nuxt application where we are currently at. So if you have your JavaScript or TypeScript code, they will be written within this script right here. Your HTML will be written right here, and your styling, which is your CSS, will be written right here. Now in my script, I want to specifically use TypeScript. So for me to do that, I'm going to say setup and say land, which basically language should be TS, which means that the language that is expected to be used right here should be a TypeScript code. Now for my styling right here, I want this style to only affect this template right here within this file. For me to do that, I'm going to come right here and just say scoped. When you add this scoped right here, whatever CSS styling you have right here will only affect these components or these whatever you have in this template only. It will not be a global style. So that is it. And I'm just going to first of all quickly have my styling up right here in my navbar, as we don't really want to waste time, with this. We just want to pre-write our style and then just have it up right here. So this is my pre-written style, and that is, we can see they are all within the style tag, and I can move this down like so. And before I have my template up, I need to have some of my TypeScript code right here or my JavaScript code. Now for what we want to do, let's quickly get a view of the older project, which you can see right here. And this is the older one, and this is how our number will be. And when I am on a mobile device, I want to have a little bit of menu icon right here. So when I click on that, the menu will open up, and when I click on it again, it will close down. So let's also have that implementation. The first thing I'm going to have is, just something to check if the menu is open. If I say const is menu open, like that, and that's going to be ref, like that, and that's good. By default, it's going to be a boolean. So this is basically a variable to help me to keep track of if the menu is open off or closed, and the data is expected to hold is going to be a boolean, which can be a true or false. Now for those who do not know what ref means, ref is a better way for us to manage our state. It's a state management function that can help us create a variable and hold variable data within the state of that component. Remember, a component can exist in different states. It can be in the created state, it can be in the changing state, it can be in the destroyed state. Like when you say created, means that it can be mounted when you just move to this page, or when you just open your application, your number will be created, which means your number is being mounted, the component is mounted. It can be the changing state. When there's a change in the data, you can trigger a change and stuff like that. So a better way for us to save data in where the component is likely to be changing is to use the ref or to wrap your variable within a ref, which is what we are doing right here. So this is a variable right here, and our data will be wrapped using a ref. Okay, so that is that. Let's not talk much. And let's quickly have a method that will help us to toggle the menu open and to toggle it close. These are basically the menu. When I click on it, it's going to toggle it open. And when it's toggled open, we can then display our menu item vertically. So when I click on this right here to open it, this is the method it's going to trigger that will be called. And when I click on this to close it, it's going to call this close menu. Now, what are the essence of having this? So by having your menu opened or closed, we can conditionally display the styling for this item so they can be displayed vertically. So when the menu is in an open state, the styling should be displayed vertically. When they are not, then the styling should be hidden when we are on a mobile device. So that's the essence of this, conditional statement or method like that. Now let's have our template. Within our template, I'm just going to be a little bit faster so we can, move on quickly. And I'm going to have it up pre-written and then, just have them right here and I will explain. So this is our template. Let me move this a little bit to the left so we can, have some breathing space. And this is a template and these are HTML tags, basically like your nav header, your div and nav and all of that. Now right here, I have a conditional styling class which I'm going to be giving based on if the navbar is open or not, and also based on if we are in a mobile device or not. So now that's also, now moving to the next div, we have the Nuxt link. This is basically a way for us to navigate within a HTML template. So if you want to move from one page to another within a HTML template, you use a Nuxt link. Nuxt link. So when I click on that, it's going to take me to this home page, which is a slash. For this other one right here, this links, when I click on that, it's going to take me to the to-dos page. This other one will take me to the add page and etc. So this is basically how we navigate in a template. Now we can see the at click right here. This is going to perform an event. So when I click on task, when I click on the task flow, it's going to handle close menu like that. And this other one is home. When I'm on a mobile device and I click on home, it's going to handle the close menu, which is going to close the menu. See it like that. So now if I open this right here, this is a mobile device. When I click on home, you can see the menu is closed. So that was the logic we are doing right here. It's going to first of all check if we are in a if we are in a mobile device, then it's going to then close the menu. If we're not on a mobile device, it's going to be ignored. So at click is going to trigger when you do something. And what we are doing right here is when there's a click, which is what we are doing when you click it, which is a click, is going to trigger this method, which is to close a menu like so. Now that is it. Our home page is ready. Our navbar is ready. But if I come right here to the app, which is here, you can see it's not displaying. So for us to display this, we need to render this component in the app where where it should reside. And I'm going to come to the app.view right here, which is our base. And at the top right here, I want the navbar to be at the top. So I'm just going to come right here and say navbar and click on this so that it will be imported. And you can see it has been imported right here for us. And then that navbar is sitting at the very top right here. And then that's going to help the navbar to be displayed at the top. You can see the navbar is being displayed at the top right here. And when we have our footer, we're going to come to the very bottom right here and then register the footer that is going to make the footer display at the bottom right here, while our page is going to be at the middle right here. So we're going to head down quickly to have the footer. Now for our footer, within my component folder, I'm going to create a new file, call it footer.view. And again, we're going to have our script section. We're going to have our template section. And then also, we're going to have our style section, or let's say style path. So at our custom is, we're going to quickly have our CSS styling up right there. And then I'm going to, after that, I'm going to have my script. Again, we want to specifically make use of TypeScript. I'm just going to say setup, then the language is going to be TS. And then I just want to display the current year because our template is going to be static. So we just only want to display the current year within the template. So I'm just going to have a template implementation brought up quickly like that. It's just some dummy data, but we are, so you have the home. Again, the Nuxt link help us to link auto navigate to whatever page we specify in the tool. This will take you to the home page, this will take you to the my to-dos page, and the other one to add a to-do, like that. So let's get to see this. Before we do that, we need to register that, or we need to display that within the app.view right here, which is your home application. And below right here, we need to bring in the footer. Make sure that is being imported, and you can see the imports right here. Make sure the footer are being imported, and that's going to be there. Now, if you are having some difficulty importing, you can come right here, and at the top right here, you can then select, at the top right here of your code, you can select settings, then click on settings, and then right here, you can type for auto import, something like that. You see auto import, then select JavaScript and TypeScript right here, and language feature, and make sure this is in prompt like that, which is going to help us to do that. And also you should also, in addition, you can also have the framework. So come to the extension, search for view or Nuxt, select a view, make sure you have view official installed. So this can help your code to recognize view syntax and to also help you write view code appropriately. And then, or if you want to add Nuxt to do any host, search for Nuxt, and me search for Nuxt. And you can see you can have your Nuxt extension pack and stuff. Yeah, or you can see view and Nuxt snippet. If you want to like a shortcut. But the most important thing you need to have is to have this view right here. This one I showed earlier, this view official, like that. Very important. Make sure you have that in your extension. So that is that. And if I, again, my app footer has been registered there. I'm going to come to my project, and you can see the footer is being displayed, and we can see our hello world right here, which is displayed at the middle because we specified that should be at the middle. If I move my footer at the top right here below the page, you can see page is now here, footer is here. If I move it to the very top before the navbar, you can see footer is now at the top, the nav is here. Some crazy stuff. So let's just keep it where it should be, which is at the bottom of the page, which is going to be like this. So we're going to head on to have the home page, and that's going to be within the pages right here. For our home page, let me close this up right here. Within the pages right here, in the pages, make sure you create a new file and call it index.view. This file must be named as index. It's a very sensitive keyword. So when the user go to your localhost and then slash, just like that, is going to display the index page like that. So this is a sensitive word, and that's going to be your home page. Within your pages, you have your index like that. Okay. And if you want to have like a different name for your home page, you can probably within the pages create a new folder, or you can call it home, and then within that home have your index also, like that. Or you can just say you want to call this, create a new file, call it home.view or something. Say okay. Then the path will then be /home. But when you have the index, you don't need to type in /home. By just going to your local host, is going to render the index file. But if your page was called home, if it was called home.view, and you want to access this here, you must then probably call it this is slash home or something like that. Like, yeah, just to bring that up. Okay. So now call it index.view, and then within this home page, I'm going to have my templates and then my styling, and then that's going to be scoped to this file like so. Now you can, if you want, I do not have my script because I'm not going to be using scripts. It's just basically a static page. This is what we want to do as our home page. We want to do something like this. All of this data will just be static, short static data, and then some links that we can use to navigate. So for this link, we can use the next link to navigate. So we don't need a script. So if you don't need a script, you get rid of that script tag or that script. Yeah, say tag. So for my styling, let me quickly have my styling up, and that's going to be here. And then for my templates, I'm going to be having them up as well. Let's first of all have the first template up right. Before I will do that, let me create my div, and then wrap everything within this styling right here, which I'm going to call home. And then after that, I'm going to create my section, which is going to be the first part, which is expected to be this one right here, this hero section. If I come right here, we're still having, 44/home, or let me just say slash like that. Okay, it's not the home, it's not displaying because we've not displayed that. That's no problem. So this is going to be the first part, and then let me have the code for this second part, and that's going to be this section for the second part like that. So both of them are there, and again, this is just a static template with HTML and CSS stuff, and then I have my Nuxt link, which is going to help me navigate to the various stuff. So for this, let me say add your to do, and then this is going to be view my task or something like that. Now again, if we come right here, we can see our home page is not being displayed. If I pull this up right here, let me Ctrl C and clear this up and start again, it's not still going to work. We are not going to get that displayed. Let me refresh. It's not going to work because we are not defining the route. Now for us to do that, we're going to come to my app.view right here, and within, let me get rid of this H1. So right here, we're going to display our page or our routing by saying, let me wrap everything within a main. Not really a problem. And right here, I'm going to say, I want a Nuxt page. Bring in your Nuxt page like that. And by just doing something like this, that's all you need to do. Whatever page you are is going to be rendered in this page right here. So this Nuxt page means that whatever page you navigate to will be replaced or will be placed right here. Your Navbar will be at the top, your footer will be at the bottom, and this page right here, your page which you are in, is going to be placed right here. Let me pull my terminal to be sure it's working correctly. Let me Ctrl C, run that again, and if I come right now, you can see this is it, and our home page, our index is working, as you can see right here. Now, I was trying to explain that if you go to /home, it's not going to work because that page does not exist. So if you want that to be, I'm just going to come again to the page. Let me just create, say home, so we can explain to you how this works. Home.view, and then that should be home.view, vue, and then I'm going to have my template, and then let me have my style, and then this is going to be scoped, and then I'm just going to have my H1 and say welcome home. I'm just going to say H1 right here, and then let's just say background color to be, let's say blue, and then text align, let's say center, and then let's say color be red. Now if I come right here, now if I go to /home, you can see this is it right here, welcome home right here, and it's now working. So if I copy everything in my index right here and place it in my home right here, and now you can see if I go to /home, this is our home stuff, is now working. If I go to This other index is our index, and if I go to, if I say slash home, it's now working. So this is basically how routing work in Nuxt, and it's very, very easy and very sweet. So if you've been working with Nuxt, and you're going to have a very, very wonderful time. So we can actually get rid of this home because we don't really need that. Our home is basically our index. So I can just come right here, delete this one, and I mean, it's not really needed, right? So that's it. And we're going to head on to have a page to display all our to-do. Now, before we do that, I'm going to have my service method, because right now in the next lecture or in the next subsequent lectures, we are going to be getting our data from our backend. So we need a service that will help us to do that. So for the to-do service, and I'm going to come right here within my service right here. I'm going to right click and create a new file and call it to do service.ts. And I'm going to first of all define my API, my URL to connect to my backend, which is basically, I call it API URL, and that's going to be HTTP. And again, we are on localhost, so you say localhost, and then our port was 8085, and then yeah, I think that was it. So before I head on, I want to have some interface, which is going to be for our to do data interface, and that's going to be export. Make sure you're exporting a very important export interface, and that's going to be called to do. I also want to have a type for our API response. Again, if you don't want to do this, you can probably don't, if you don't really need any of these, if you don't do this, you can just call your API type return to be any, right? But we just want to show how, TypeScript can be of use when you have your type data down. So I'm just going to head on to create some methods. The first one will be to, let's first of all just have a to-do service, and I'm just going to call that to-do service like that, and make sure you're exporting it. And this is going to be an object of all the methods we'll need in our application. And the first one is going to be to get all to-dos, and that's going to say async, and then let's call it get all to-dos, and then that's expected to return a promise of an object in an array of to-do, so you can say to-do array. So peradventure, if you do not want, to have specific types like this, you can just call it an array of an any. What am I doing? You can just say an any array. So if you're not comfortable having your type value like this, you can just say it should return an array of any. Or having to say a to do is more of the power of using TypeScript. Okay, so I'm going to have my methods write down quickly, which is going to be my response. I'm going to await, and I use the fetch API, which is the fetch, and I'm going to specify my URL, my base URL like that, my base URL, which is my link to my URL of my backend. Then remember, for the to-dos part is slash to-dos. That's going to be for the to-dos, to get the to-dos. And I'm going to say the JSON right here. Let's convert it to the JSON, and that's going to be API response. Again, it's going to expect a to-do data, and I'm going to say await the response from our API.json like that, and that's going to convert our application to JSON. Now after that, I'm then going to just say if the response is okay, if there are no error, then do stuff, return the data. But if there's error, if not response to okay, if there's error, throw the error. If peradventure you don't know where the error is, just say fail to fetch to dos. But if everything is okay, let's return the to dos by saying return, then the JSON, let's extract the data. It's going to be the JSON.data like that. This is going to be, let me put a comma right here so we can have auto method. This is going to be a method to get auto do. Also have to get a to do by ID. By default, if you don't specify the method, API method is going to be a get request. So to get a to do by ID, that's going to be the method. To create a to do, this is where you have to define your data type, your API method right here. You can see we want to create a post request, so you have to like pass in an object to say the method is a post, the header is going to be an application JSON, and then you have to pass in your body. This time around, because we are passing the string title and description, we have to bundle it into an object and then pass it down as a body. Again, wait for your response, then get the JSON and then extract the data. That's going to be to create a to-do. They also have to update and then to delete a to-do. So for the update, that's going to be the same thing. It's an update. You pass in your object, which is going to be the method, which is a post, and then your body and then header. Also for delete, also the same thing. They also do that. And this is going to be to delete a to-do. So with this method, we can call them at the respective page to perform the operation that are required of them. So we're going to head on to just have a to-dos page, which is going to be a page to display all existing to-dos. So for all to-dos page, I'm going to come to my page right here, create a new file, and I can call it to-dos, something like this, then .vue. And so what this means is that when I come right here and go to slash to-dos, TODOX, like this, to-dos is going to display the to-dos page. Now, again, we know what to do. You have to have your scripts like that. Then you have to have your template. And then you have to have your style, and it should be scoped. And then for my script, I need to just say language should be TS like that. So first of all, I need to have my styling set up or brought down. And that's going to be my styling should be brought down right here. And this is going to have the style for this page. Now for my script, I want to have a method to display to-dos. Again, that's going to be the variable to save my to-dos when I'm getting my to-dos from my DB, and that's going to be saved right here. Again, we are wrapping it using the ref. As we rightly saw, the ref is a better way for us to manage a variable within a component or within the component lifecycle. I'm going to click on the to-do right here and import it from my to-do service, and we can see that's been imported right here. Then we also have, if there's error, we want to also display the error, right, save the error right here. And in the to-dos page, I want to also be able to bring a modal up, which I can use to delete a to-do. Now, before I do that, let's just give a little overview of what we want to do. Now, this in an order to do page, I want to have a situation whereby when I click on the delete right here, it's going to pull on a modal, which is going to prompt me if I want to delete the to-do. If I click on yes, it's going to delete the to-do, and if I click on cancel, it's going to close that modal. So I need to keep a track on if the modal is open or in the closed state, and that can be done by having the variable to say is modal open, and then the to delete, which is going to be the to ID like that. Okay, now I'm going to mount this stuff. So when the component is mounted, or when a user comes to this page for the first time, we want to fetch all our to-dos. So there's a method for us to save on mounted, which is a lifecycle method. And what I'm going to do right here is within this, I'm going to have a method to say if this to do whenever a user comes to this page for the first time, or if this component is mounted, I want to call a method to say fetch to do's like that. And this method is going to be written down right here, which is going to help us fetch a to do. So let me just have the method down right here, and that's going to make a call to our API service. Make sure these are being imported. And for your to do, this is a type. Make sure you have this type before it. If not, it's not going to work because this is actually a type right here. So make sure you have that type, you know, placed on it before it. So that's going to import my to do service and my to do, and that's going to help us get the data, and we are saving the data to these to-dos right here by saying to-dos.value equal to the result of your API service, which is going to get all our to-dos from our backend. If we have error, we're basically going to save the error and display it on our template. Now moving on, I want to have to open a modal, which means when you click on the delete, we want to trigger this method by passing the to-do ID we want to delete, and then this is going to open the modal for me. When I click on confirm, something like this, delete is going to trigger that method which is open the modal. When I click on yes delete, it's going to pass this ID down and trigger this method right here, which I'm going to write down. This method say confirm delete is going to call our delete to do service method in our to do service and delete the modal. And when that is done, delete the to do. When that is done, it's going to trigger the close modal method, which is going to help us to hide the modal, or more appropriately, to close the modal. So that is it. So let's have our to-dos right there displayed in our template. So that's our script ends here. Let's keep track. And here is our template. I'm going to first of all have a div, and then close it, and it's going to contain all our implementation. First of all, let's have this button right here, this top right here, to say my to-dos add a to-do, and that's going to be this one right here. And as we can see, let me zoom this a little bit out. As we can see, when you click on add to do, it's going to use the Nuxt link to navigate to the add page, and this other one is just a H1. Now if there's error, I'm going to display something right here. If we have error, I'm going to display the error. Now for those who are not used to Nuxt, if this is what we call a conditional statement, what this means is that v-if means that if this value is true, if error has a value, if this is not empty, or if it is true, or if it has a value, this entire template will be displayed or will be rendered. And what are we doing right here? We're basically displaying the error right here. So if this error is not there, if there's no value in the error, this entire template will not be displayed, or it will be hidden. So that is one of a conditional statements, how you can write if statement, else, and for loop, those kind of stuff like that. So that is it. Then I'm also going to say if, to do, if I'm just going to add another conditional statement to say if the to do has data, by saying checking the length, that's going to be if conditional statement, if the to do which we've gotten from our backend, if the length is 0, that means that there are no tasks. So say no task yet, create your first task. So else, if we have task, if we have our to-do length is greater than 1, if we have a data, then let's display our to-dos right here. We can see I'm using v-for. This is a for loop right here by saying v-for, which means that for each item in these to-dos, remember the to-dos is what is holding all our to-dos. By saying that for one item to do in these to-dos right here, then loop over it, collect each of the item as to do, and then we can say to do the title to display the title, description to display the description, and we have some buttons right here where you can edit, you delete and stuff like that. When you click on edit, it's going to take you to the edit page. When you click on delete, it's going to delete it, and it's going to prompt you to open the open modal and pass the ID. So that's it. Now let's have our modal, also our modal. We've not had that. So our modal, let me Just have that right here. Let me close this up right here. Our modal is going to be here. This is going to be the modal that we pull our, when you click on it, I would pull this template, this thing right here. So that is it. So let me test this out. I'm going to refresh this. You can see this is it. You can see this is our existing to do. When I try to click on delete, if I say cancel, it goes back. If I say yes, that's been done. And if I click add to do, add page does not exist. If I click edit to do, the edit page does not exist. So we're going to head on to have page where we can add a to do. So let's have our add to do page. So we want to have something like this, a page like this, a simple form where you can pass your to do title and description, and when you click on the create to do, it's going to add this to do to your, it's just going to save it to your DB. So I'm going to come right here. Let's close this up, and then I'm going to bring my pages right here, and the page name is going to be add dot view. So when you have like this, so when you go to slash add, something like slash add, is going to render this page right here. So whatever you type in, the name right here should be the name of the path. So in Nuxt, the name of the page is the same as the name of the path. Okay, so again, as our custom is, you have your script, you have your template, and then you have your style. So this is going to be scoped as usual, and what the script is going to have your setup, and then your language is going to be the TypeScript, like that TS. Now, in the style right here, we just want to also quickly have our style down, so we'll be on the same page, and I'm going to have it up right here, like so. And then for our script, we're going to, first of all, let me bring within my script, let me bring my service down, which is going to be to do service, like that, and that's been imported, as we can see. And I'm going to create an object of my router by saying router equal to, this what we call the use router, use router, like that, and invoke it, and that's going to be. Now for those who are wondering what the router is, the router is what we can use to navigate in a script part. When you are writing your TypeScript code or your JavaScript code, you cannot use the Nuxt router to navigate. So this is how you can navigate, by basically saying router dot push, and then you specify the path name which you want to move to, and this is going to navigate to that page. So this is done in the script. And if you want to navigate in the template, you basically use the Nuxt, link, as you rightly saw. So have your Nuxt link right here, and then you're going to say to, and then where do you want to move to, and that's going to be the to-dos. So this is how to navigate in your script, your TypeScript or your JavaScript environment, while this is how to navigate in your template, which is your HTML environment. So now let's do that. So I'm going to move on. Now I'm going to have my variables to hold my title, my description, and then if there are errors, we also have to hold them. So that's going to be something like this. So this is the title that we hold, the form title. Yeah, whatever you're typing in is going to be saved right here as a title. Description too, whatever you are typing in will be saved as description. And when making API call to save our data, if we have any error, the error will be saved right here. And if we click on the submit, I want the submitting to be true, so we can conditionally display a more like a test right here saying creating to do. And when the to do has been created, we can then revert back to this. There's just a beautiful user experience stuff. And let's have the method that will help us to handle a submit. So it's very simple. What we want to do is we want to bundle the data, which is your title, your description. We are bundling them together, and we are passing it into the create to do method in our to do service. You can see we are passing the title. I'm trimming it. The trim is to remove extra white spaces. And then passing the description, I'm removing white spaces. Now, if this, remember we are awaiting this stuff, so which means that it's going to wait until this service is completed. And if this is completed, we're going to push, which means that we're navigating to the to-dos page. It's going to go to the page where we can display all the to-dos. If we have any error, we're going to save it. And then finally, if everything is complete, we're going to set the submitted to be false so we can release our button to then be clickable. Now that's it for our template. I'm going to, just do it one after the other. I'm going to first of all have our form. That's the template right here. I'm going to have my form page that's going to be wrapped within a div, and then I'm going to have my form card, another div again to wrap this form card like that. Let's do it that way. And I'm going to have my h1 and p, just to say add to do, and then just have a description, something like this, these ones right here. After we've done that, let me say if we have error, let's display the error. That's going to be done right here. If there's error, let's display it. Else, if there's no error, I'm going to build my form like that, and then I'm going to have passing my style, and then if I'm submitting, just have my on submit right there. So at submit means that if you click on the submit button, want to prevent the default, and they want to run the handle submit method, which is going to package our title and description and call the create to do method. Okay, now let me have my label and my inputs, and I'm going to explain something right on. So that's going to be my label. That should be wrapped within a div. So let me just do that within the div like that. Okay, so right here I'm having a div which has the label, which is going to be this label right here, and then the input, which is what user will pass in this input right here. Now in the inputs, let me move this down a little bit so we can see something. And in the inputs, we have our class styling, which is we understand. Then we have the placeholder, which is going to be this, and then we have the vmode. Now, if you see this vmode right here, this is what we call a two-way data binding. We can see what this means is that whatever value you have in this title right here, this title, whatever existing value you have right there, will be the value that will be displayed. And whenever a user is typing in anything, it's going to save it right here and you can display it. So that's the essence of this vmode. It's a two-way data binding, which help you to, display existing data, collect data, and pass it down. So as it is saving the data to the title right here, it's watching the title and also displaying the content. So that's this vmode right here. That's how two-way data binding works. Now I'm going to move on to have the other one that will display the where I can type in the description, and that's going to be a test area right here. And again, I'm using the v model, which is a two-way data binding, and when you are typing in, we already know what is going to happen. It's going to save that and display the data. Also, let me have my submit button, which is going to be used to submit, which is right here. And again, I am saying that if the function is in the submit state, then say creating. If we are done submitting, say create to do. And when we are submitting, we want to disable the button. You can see I'm disabling this button, so you cannot click on the submit twice. So it is more like user experience kind of design. So when you are submitting a to do, you will get to know that you are submitting the to do. You can't really do something twice, and when it's done, you are going to get to know. So that's it for the add to do's page. Let me pull up my terminal to be sure it's running, because it's been long. I ran it, so I'm just going to Ctrl C to stop and then run that again. So I'm going to head back to this add to do's page. Let me refresh that. You can see this is the add to do. So again, go to the to do's right here. We currently have 3 data. Click add to do. Let me just say my first to do item, and for description, let me just say some items. Click on create to do. You can see my 4 to-do items and some items. I can click on delete, and that has been done. Now, the next thing I have to do is going to be how to add a to-do. So if I click how to edit a to-do, I click on edit to-do, this page is not found. So let's bring this page to life. Now for the add to do, for the edit to do page, you can see this is basically what how the part we want to be. Want to be able to say your base, slash your ID, which is going to be the to do ID slash the edit. So we need to create a path like this or a folder. We need to create a folder like this, folder structure like this, so it can match our edit. So I'm going to come back to my code right here. I'm going to put this down and close this up. In my pages right here, I need to create a folder, edit, sorry, that's edit folder. That should be add folder, new folder like that. And that's going to be, do something like the bracket ID, then that's just a folder, and within this folder right here, you're going to create a new file, call it edit.view. So that is it. Again, this, let me zoom this in. This bracket is a very sensitive keyword in Nuxt. So when a Nuxt sees this bracket, it treats it as an ID, or it treats it as an ID, or you are going to, it's treated as a key where you can extract a value from. So if you can look at my route right here, it says /12/edit. So when it sees this bracket be wrapped by a value, it sees that as a variable, so it can easily extract. So this variable ID is expected to hold the data 12 or whatever data we are passing in. So this is this code format for a Nuxt. That's how the Nuxt reads your application by default. Okay. So yeah, let me take this back, and as usual, let's have our script, and that's going to be a TypeScript. Language is going to be TS, and then let me have my template right here, and then let me have my style. As usual, you have to scope it to this file only. Scoped. So before we do anything, we need to bring our style down to be on the same page, which is like this. And then in my script right here, remember, because we are, we want a situation. Let me use the older one. We want a situation. When I click on edit, it's going to display the existing data. Let me do this one. When I click on edit, it's going to display the existing data on the go as I am on that page. So we need to be able to extract these, data, this ID from the URL, then fetch a to-do by that ID, then display it. So that's what we want to do. And in the script right here, I'm going to use what we call a use route, which is going to help us to scan the route for a variable called ID and get hold of the value and then fetch a to-do by ID. So that's going to be, again, we're going to bring the object called route. That's going to be use routes. Then we also have what we call a router, as you rightly saw, which is to navigate. That's actually a router, and that's going to be use router. So the router is going to help us to, the router will help us to navigate away from the page, while the route is going to help us to scan your URL for any variable and extract the value. Now, we're going to be doing that right away by saying const ID. We actually want to scan the ID. That's going to be a number. That's the data type. And we're basically wrapping everything with as a number, which means we're converting the value to a number. And that's going to be our route. We're saying route dot params is going to scan our URL and get hold of a params called ID. So whatever you call this value right here, we can say I'm calling it ID. That should be what you will say it is. So when you say dot ID, it's going to get hold of this ID right here and extract the value, in this case, which can be a 22 or a 12 or any data. Now that's going to save the ID like that, and then I can proceed with the date to get my to-dos by ID. Now before I do that, I'm just going to have some, ref to still store my data, like the title, the description is completed. This value will be getting from the deed from our backend, and they will be stored right here. And users can also, modify this data and pass it back to re-update. So I'm going to have again the unmounted. We already know this. This will be run when my component is mounted. And I just want to, I can come to unmounted and then just do something like this, and then have my method right here to say fetch to do by ID, to do by IG, but I just want to have everything together. You can also have all the implementation within this mount unmounted right here instead of having a function. So these are all the implementations right here. It has been added, and I'm going to bring in the to-do service. So what this method is doing is that anytime I come to this page, or when the component is mounted on the screen, then I'm going to call the to do right here to get a to do by the ID which I've extracted from the params, and then I'm going to get a to do by ID. If that value is there, I'm going to set the title to be the value. I'm going to set the description and then this completed value, and that's going to hold the data right here. And then if there's error, I can display the error. Now we're going to head on to have a method where we can submit the to-do. If I decide to edit and modify the data, we need to click on the submit, and that method will help us to handle a submit. To handle a submit, that's going to be this method right here. And again, it's basically bundling our title, description is complete, and then it's going to make a call to update to do, and it's going to wait for the response. If it's successful, it's going to push. That means it's navigating to the to-dos page. If there's any error, it's going to catch it right here, and after everything, it's going to turn the is submitting off, so we can release our button for further use. Now in my template, I'm just going to have my template data up and running, and then it's a very simple form, same as when we were creating our to-do, when we are adding our to-do. So this is a simple form here, and again it's a form, and it has an input that will display your title. Again, you can see we're using a two-way data binding, which is the v model, and that's going to save the title and also listen to the title like that. So this is our title, there our description, and this is completed. It's going to save and display those data, and when you click on submit, it's going to bundle them and call the handle submit method like so. So that is it. So let's test this out, make sure our app is running correctly, and I'm going to come back right here. So this is it right here. Let me refresh. You can see like that. So let me go back to the to-dos, click on this one to buy groceries, and then mark as completed, save. You can see to buy groceries is complete. I can edit it again and just say the description to say completed. I don't know, and that's completed. So watch Spain versus France. I can edit this and say mark as completed as well. And then this other one to study for a pilot program, I can unmark that, and that's been edited. So our edit has worked. Let's just add a new one and say, I don't know, to teach, let me say to teach a friend how to drive. This is going to be done like, I don't know, probably tomorrow, and description just, let me say to help a friend out. Create, and that's been created. I can edit and say, let me just say delayed, as you can see right here. So everything is working correctly. We can go to our home, you can view my to-dos, you can add one, you can edit, you can delete, etc. So now let's have a wildcard, so that when you go to a URL that does not exist, it's going to, instead of showing you a page, not a kind of crazy stuff, is going to show you an organized page. So right now, if I go to slash anything, enter, you can see I'm getting this 404 page kind of big error showing up right here. and this is not really the best. If I click on go back, it's going to take me home, and this is the default 404 page by Nuxt, and it's not really the best. So let's have our own custom one. So for us to do that is very simple. Come back to your page, and within your page right here, I'm going to create a new file. Click on new file, and that's going to be your bracket like that. Click on three dots. Let me zoom this in. Your bracket three dot, then say slug, and then you're going to just say dot view. Click on your bracket, within the bracket three dots, slug, then dot view. Then click on that. And here, as usual, you have your template, and then you have your style. So I think from here we can easily move on from here. Template, let me just say style, let's just say scoped, and then let's have our style right there. And then I'm going to then have my template, which is going to be some funny stuff right here. Let me just have the template up so we can be a little bit faster. And that's it for my templates like that. And yep, so that's it. So yeah, the most important thing is your naming convention. That's very important. So make sure this is going to be your page name, and any page that does not correspond is going to redirect to this. So if I come right now and I type in some crazy stuff, enter. Oh, I was actually not even typing. So I didn't pass a slash. Let's say slash. And what am I even doing? Slash crazy stuff. And that link is not there. You can see lost in space. Let's get you back. The page does not exist. It must be moved. So this was the custom one we added, right? And then I can then click on check my task. It's going to take me to my task page. Or if I type in the wrong one again, I can click on return home, and it's going to take me to my home page like that. So that is it for having custom 404 page, and something very fancy. So that's it for the end of this course, and I'm going to have both the back end and the front end code shared, and you can easily have access to them, go over your code. Also, don't forget to always use AI tools. So if you have any piece of code that is not clear to you, you can copy that, paste it on an AI tool, and it's going to interpret the code for you. You can also use AI code tools to write your code, go over them, just modify to make sure they suit your need. We're going to see in subsequent